In this video, I want to take a look at fraud in the workplace. This video, I suppose, is really aimed at the employer and what he or she should be doing if a situation of fraud occurs in the workplace. It's an awkward one because the advice is conflicting from person to person as to what you should do, and then there's the argument that if the guards are involved, if there's a criminal prosecution or investigation going on, then you can't do anything. But that's not really the case, and hopefully in this video I'll give you some tips or some guidance as to what is the best way to deal with fraud in the workplace. So what is fraud? Well, fraud is an intentional act of deceit with the objective of gaining an unlawful advantage. If it's not intentional, it may just be a case of incompetence, inadvertence, or negligence. Examples of fraud would be dipping the till in a retail environment, fiddling expenses, clocking in or clocking out, wrongdoing or fiddling, work patterns or hours worked, and so on. So if you're the employer, you certainly need to be on solid enough ground in terms of being fraud rather than just stupidity or unintentional mistakes. The employer's goals then, if a situation of fraud occurs, is really one, to remove the employee from the workplace, and number two is to gather evidence. The reason you're going to gather evidence is essentially because you're going to invoke the disciplinary procedure in the workplace, which you should have, and it's at times like these that you'll be glad that you did have a disciplinary procedure. If you do invoke the disciplinary procedure, and I would strongly advise that you do, if the facts support on the balance of probability that there is perhaps a case of or an instance of gross misconduct, well then it may well be a situation for summary dismissal. Now you need to be careful about that, but clearly if somebody is fraudulently stealing from you, well then it could well be a case for gross misconduct, because essentially the necessary trust and confidence is going to be gone between you and the employee. It's critical, as I say, to have a disciplinary procedure in the workplace, but you need then in it to, when you're invoking it, to go with the strongest, clearest allegations that do not require extensive documentation, witnesses or time. So these will be sample allegations. So if you are suspicious about, for example, in a retail environment, and I'll just focus on that for the moment for the purpose of this video, if you see 10 instances of situations where you suspect the employee may have taken stock or taken money, but 6 of them are going to require further investigation, documents, witnesses, time, etc., and they're not clear-cut, but you have 4 clear-cut allegations, well then you're better off probably going with the 4 clear-cut ones out of the 10 in order to progress your investigation, progress your disciplinary procedure, suspend the employee and ultimately take action. The question then arises whether you should report to the Gardaí or not. Well, clearly if there's a situation, an allegation of theft, then that's something for yourself, but it's certainly an option. It will depend obviously on the seriousness of the fraud and the amount of money involved. You do need to bear in mind as well that you need to send out a message to other employees in relation to copycat acts, because if you don't treat it seriously, if you don't report it, then you may be leaving yourself open to other employees following the example, and on the basis that you don't really go down too hard on them, on the employee, and you don't report it to the Gardaí. So that's something to consider. In the High Court in 2015, in a case involving an on-post worker, there was an investigation by the Gardaí and there was a disciplinary procedure. The on-post worker tried to prevent or injunct and stop the disciplinary procedure on the basis that there was a criminal prosecution or investigation ongoing, and he was entitled to await the outcome of the criminal proceedings. However, the High Court held that it was in order, it was acceptable for the employer to proceed with the disciplinary procedure unless it was manifestly unfair, even in circumstances where a criminal investigation or prosecution is ongoing. What you want to do, though, obviously, with any disciplinary procedure is ensure fair procedures and natural justice. So you make sure that you follow your own disciplinary procedure in the workplace, ensure that the employee gets fair procedures and natural justice, and if the employee goes out sick, and particularly if he or she produces a note indicating that he or she is suffering from stress, then I would recommend that you get professional advice. My name is Terry Gorry. I'm a solicitor in Enfield and County Meath. I do quite a bit of employment law. My website, Employment Rights Ireland, which you can see on the screen there, the URL, contains quite a lot of information about employment law in Ireland. And I also have a YouTube channel which I think you'll find useful. If you find this useful, give us a thumbs up, please. Thank you.